Hello guys, and welcome to my second Kerbal Space Program video. You might have seen my one on Minmus, the one I did on my Minmus landing yesterday, and I felt that went pretty well. We did a quick Minmus mission, just a quick lander. So today we're going to do the Mun. This is a step up from Minmus. Minmus is pretty easy, it's the easiest place to get to, very low surface gravity, very low delta V requirements, just a generally very easy place to land. But today we're going to be doing the Mun. The Mun is significantly harder, requires a lot more thrust to weight ratio to get off of, more delta V, so in general the Mun is sort of your second location, even though it is closer than Minmus. So you can see me here constructing a small rover that we're also going to put on the surface. Now, it's not, something you can just leave there. It does need a Kerbal to operate. I wish, in retrospect, I did put a probe core on it, but I didn't. So, we're just going to have Jeb drive it around. It has a scanning arm on it from the Breaking Ground DLC, so we're going to scan some scannable objects as well as some deployable science, so we can leave some science experiments on the surface of the Mun, as well as antennae and some solar panels to get electricity. So above it, you can see me constructing the lander. It's sort of a Curiosity style lander with the sky crane design. Not quite, but it's sort of like that. Now you may eventually see a problem here. There is only space for 2 Kerbals in the landing module, I suppose, or the re-entering module, the capsule, that will eventually come down on Kerbin, but I accidentally put both Bill, Bob, and Jebediah on the craft after we were done. So we had to sort of come up with something during the mission to bring them all back, because I couldn't leave the lander anymore because I had to bring all 3 back and I only had space for 2. So we did have to re-enter with the lander, but it all ended up being okay. So I'm building the craft here. This is 1.10 now, so I have the new silver fairing texture, as well as a couple other textures. But overall, the mission went pretty well. You can see me building the fairing here. The rover sort of works okay. I did have some problems with it. The landing adapter thingy between the landing craft and the rover sort of blew up on the way down, and it caused some problems, but you'll see. So I put a mainsail, I think it is, and then 2 thoroughbred SRBs. The new were relatively new. I guess it's been a while. What was that, 1.9? But we have the SRBs. I don't use them very often, but I did want to give them a little kick off the launch pad. I ended up changing out that engine in between as the transfer module for the Mun, just so that I have a little bit more delta V. I changed it to the oh god, what's the one with, I think it's the Poodle. It has a lot more delta V and just was generally a better engine. So here we are on the launch pad. It's a pretty nice looking rocket. I could have done it a little bit smaller, but I felt like this was a good size, and we had a little bit of excess delta V, but it wasn't a big deal, and we are carrying up a rover, so I did want to sort of give myself some extra margins. So as you can see, we are carrying Bill, Bob, and Jebediah. I wish I only carried, I guess, Bill and Jeb, or Bob and Jeb, because the re-entering module only has space for 2, so we did have to re-enter with the lander, but overall, this craft flew, pretty well. We're doing the gravity turn here. You should be pointing about 45 degrees by 10 kilometers. I was kind of distracted on the way up, so I didn't quite get that. I should have burned more horizontal towards the end of that burn, but it's not that big of a deal. I think we're aiming for around 100 kilometers. So, entering the atmosphere went pretty well. We have a little bit of excess delta V, and we're just going to circularize on the burn here with the maneuver node. If you can't get into orbit, I recommend watching. I'm sure Scott Manley probably has some sort of tutorial on getting into orbit. So we just drug out that maneuver node and sort of spun it around our orbit until we got an encounter with the Mun. Not too hard to get an encounter with the Mun. If you can't do it, just drag your maneuver node, prograde vector out until it lines up with the orbit, and then spin it around your orbit until you get an encounter. I got a couple encounters, but this was the best one, so you can see me ditching the stage there. I think it did create a little bit of space debris, but not that big of a deal. So we've encountered the Mun. This could have gone better. My circularization burn around the Mun was a little bit rough, but it ended up being okay. We had a mid-course correction here just so we didn't end up colliding with the Mun. I'd recommend around 10 kilometers, same as Minmus, although you can do a little bit lower with Minmus, like I said in the last video. But I recommend around 10 kilometers above the surface of the Mun, just to avoid any like high rocks or high mountains. 10 is a little bit higher than you really need. I don't think there's any mountains on the Mun higher than like 4 or 5, but why not be safe? So, you know, no reason to risk it. That your poor little Kerbals don't want to collide with the surface of the Mun. So you can see here, coming up in that maneuver, we're just going to circularize around the Mun. It doesn't have to be too clean. It is roughly an equatorial orbit. You don't want it to be quite like perfectly equatorial, because if you move the lander around on descent, it might be hard to get an encounter with your mothership. So I sort of realized here that I had 3, so I knew I was going to have to bring the lander right here. But we've switched to the lander. There we go. And we have those Twitch engines just powering it. So you may be wondering how we are going to drop the lander. Our landing legs obviously don't extend past that rover, and we're not going to land on the rover. We're sort of going to drop it. Oh, and you can see here some graphical glitches. I'm not sure what caused that. I uninstalled environmental visual enhancements, so I'm not quite sure why those glitches were caused, but they went away, so it wasn't too big of a deal. We're just descending now and about to touch down on the surface. I did end up leaving the rover in the science experiments here, so who knows? Maybe we'll come back to this place and build some sort of base here and recover it. If you guys want to see a Mun base, just let me know, and I'd absolutely be open to that. I think next video, well, here we are. We've just landed, and you can see I dropped the rover. And then we'll just go slightly to the side and touch down the lander. And we have landed, almost. There we go. So, I think next video is either going to be a one-way Duna mission, or a Duna in return. Somebody suggested on Reddit that I do a Duna return, or a Duna rover. But I thought, Duna rovers are sort of basic, so I'm thinking of doing maybe a small Duna quadcopter type idea. A small helicopter that I can sort of survey out, maybe find a landing spot, who knows. So if you guys want to see that, or just straight away doing a manned mission to Duna, I'd be open to that too, so just let me know. So I'm not sure what exploded there, you can sort of see, but it didn't blow anything up besides itself, I guess, so it wasn't that big of a deal. You can see I had to disable the reaction wheels on the rover, because they were kind of spinning it around. Just turn it to SAS only and then turn off SAS. And this is actually a really good rover. It has a low center of mass on the craft, so it's not really flip happy. You can really drive it around pretty fast, and it's not a big deal. So I'm looking around for some of those breaking ground objects, and I didn't think this rock was one, but it did, flip me over almost. And if you can collide with it, then it is a actual breaking ground scannable object, so we're just scanning that there. If you can drive through the rocks, you can see one behind the rover over there. If you can drive through them, then they're just surface scatters, and you can ignore them, but you can scan the ones that you hit, so that's a good way to tell. So we're just driving back to the lander here, just a quick little expedition on the rover. I looked around for some of those Mun volcano things. They're sort of like little Mun craters. They have them on Val and Joule system too, but I didn't find any, so we just went back to the lander. If you can see on the sides of the rover, I do actually have some deployable science, so we'll crack that open and place the science there. I did not bring all of the experiments. I think I brought most of them. Of course, you need the commutron, the solar panels are RTG, deployable science, and then you also need the control station. And so it only, with those two on the side, it only leaves room for 3 experiments. But I think I did pretty good on what I brought and what I didn't bring. So you can see me there deploying the solar panel and antennae on the rover. So if I wanted to bring them back, I could, but obviously it doesn't have a probe core, so I can't really drive it around, but that's alright. So we took off, and I sort of aimed for the 90-degree vector on my nav ball, but I missed it a little bit, so we did go into a little bit of an inclined orbit. Not a big deal, we can correct for that. I didn't set my mothership as target like I should have, but not too big of a deal. We're just dragging out that prograde vector till we get an encounter. This I actually launched at just about the perfect time. You should launch just almost as it's passing over you, but not quite, just before. And I was within 6 kilometers, so right about, well, it's coming up. I ended up burning retrograde relative to the target right away instead of waiting for a closer approach, because I figured, hey, it's only 6 kilometers, I might as well just do it now. So if you guys want a dedicated docking tutorial, you could, but I'll make that, sure. But it's really not that hard. You just burn, and if it's an atmosphere like from Kerbin, you want to burn significantly before it passes above you. But if it's like something like the Mun, then you can just burn pretty much when it's passing above you, and then circularize your orbit into roughly the same orbit it has. If you're behind it, then you want to make your orbits smaller, so you lower your periaps, and if you're ahead of it, you want to make your orbits longer, so you will slow down and it'll catch up to you. So it's pretty simple, and then once you get a decently close encounter, you can just burn retrograde relative to the target, and then burn to the target, and do that enough times and you'll get an encounter. So here we're just exiting the Mun's sphere of influence on this burn. You will notice that the burn indicator is sort of going whack, and this is when I realized that the landing engines were actually still activated. So I just went into the action control group settings and disabled all those engines so that I could do that. I noticed I was sort of on a ballistic trajectory here, so I burned radial out quickly to just raise that periaps above the atmosphere, and then I'll do one more orbit and then lower it just barely into the atmosphere, so I'm sort of skimming it. Because I don't really I'm re-entering with the lander, I didn't want to be entering too fast or too steeply, because I didn't want to burn the lander up. So I should have detached it, the stage a little bit later or earlier, but it's not a big deal. And this re-entry went pretty good. I did raise the gamma there, so it's a little bit brighter so if you are entering at night. But you can see it went pretty well. I didn't get any heat gauges. I think I might have, if I might have disabled the heat gauges, but this is played at 100% re-entry speed, so we're just landing. There are the parachutes. And overall, this mission went pretty well. So if you have any other suggestions for any other missions I should do, just let me know, and I'd be happy to do them. But yeah, this mission went pretty well, and thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it, and just let me know what other missions you want me to go. So, see ya.